Go back to the quarterbacks for a minute. River, you had this article here, 3 quarterbacks Buccaneers could pursue in this year's NFL draft. There's Drew Aller from Penn State you have at the very top. And then there's Taylon Green, Arkansas there, Razorbacks, showing him some love. You had to after the amount of times that you came on here and said.
That was a mistake. Amount of times. No, don't get me this. I misspoke once about Taylon Green. I like Taylon Green. There's no beef between me and
it wasn't even like a misspoke that bad. We just want to mess with you.
Of course,
it's the best thing to do. But yes, Taylon Green from Arkansas, 6'6", 227 pounds, a lot of dual threat ability for himself. Yeah. And then you got Sawyer Robertson from Baylor. He finished 5th in the FBS with 31 touchdowns in 2025. He threw 28 touchdowns the year before as well. He's totaled 6,752 passing yards. But these are the 3 quarterbacks listed here. Of course, Drew Aller is the one. I believe he just visited or is going to be visiting with the Pittsburgh Steelers as well. But he'd be more of a day 2, day 3 guy if the Bucs were going to be.
Yes, he would be. He would probably be the highest drafted quarterback.
What a big difference in size. I mean, not saying that Baker is he's your franchise quarterback. We expect for if things go well, that Baker will be your quarterback moving forward into 2027 after the season. But man, there's the difference in size here from Baker to a 6'5", 230-pound quarterback with Drew Aller.
Yeah, Aller and more so Aller than Green. I think Green's a little too big to be a prototypical quarterback, but
he's
Aller's
big.
Right, kind of in the Goldilocks sort of area of built in a lab to play the position, right? He's got a lot of work he needs, but any of these quarterbacks would. And you could have them learn behind big guys like Baker Mayfield, under Chandler Whitmer, the new quarterbacks coach from Indiana who developed Fernando Mendoza here in Tampa Bay now. I went with those 2 because Green and Aller are very raw athletic freaks that could use a lot of development to their game. Sawyer Robinson's kind of the opposite. Very productive in college. Not as physical of a specimen as the other 2, and would still need some work given he struggled with turnovers. He struggled with reading the field. So one of them is a guy that has production already, and then 2 of them are guys that you could develop that you would need to have them sit for a while. So
before we get to the rest of this episode, I want to give a special shout out to our friends over there at Prize Picks. Right now, it is the best time to utilize Prize Picks because we have the NBA playoffs, as you can see on the screen beside you. Utilize our code as well, HMA. You play 5, you get $50 back instantly. This app is available in most states, including Texas, Florida, and California as well. Play 5, get $50 back in lineups thanks to Prize Picks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those 3 guys are solid. And I've mentioned, a couple guys earlier as well, prior to, if you guys weren't here to hear that, go back and watch that here at the beginning of the podcast. But, those guys are great. It kind of depends on what direction you're kind of seeing the quarterback position move to or what direction you ultimately want your quarterback position to move to, right? So, like, do you want more of a guy who's a dual threat? Baker's kind of that, not necessarily as big of a runner as some of these other guys are. So, yeah, I mean, it depends. Taylon Green's great, big guy, massive guy, honestly. Got the dual threat ability, would kind of reminds people of a Jaden Daniels there in Washington, D.C., up there with the Commanders. And then you could also look at a guy like a Luke Altmaier if you're looking for more of a pocket passer type quarterback, probably a day 2 guy up there with the Aller on where he would probably be taken. So lots of options if you are going to go ahead and go get a backup quarterback. I don't think it's as pressing as some of these other positions, especially with Baker and how he is. You've got Browning. You can honestly sign Browning to another 1-year deal after this and move forward with Bazelak as well. So, yeah, I don't think they're pressing too much on the whole situation, but there are some solid names out there, despite it not being an overwhelmingly, looked at quarterback class as being one of those that is going to necessarily be the next generation of quarterbacks to play in the league.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think there's a uber amount of uber talented quarterbacks in this one, but there's some with a ton of experience. I mean, I'm going through a list here. Carson Beck is on here as well. That's probably going to be in that 4th to 7th range. Garrett Nussmeier. Isn't it crazy, gentlemen? We were going into this last year's college football season, and we all were looking at Garrett Nussmeier saying, this is the guy. This is going to be
I am not a fan necessarily.
Isn't that wild? Yeah. You weren't a fan going in to the season?
No, and I think he kind of prove me right. There's a lot of work he needs. I'm not as much of a fan of his game as some of the other quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a hot take for me that Rivers not going to like is I believe that Carson Beck is probably going to end up being the best quarterback of this class when it's all said and done.
Ooh,
That's not super hot. I don't love Carson Beck as a prospect either, but I mean Aller's obviously guys like Aller I think have a sky high ceiling, but it just depends on if they're going to be able to reach that, and then it's so hard to develop a quarterback. So Beck's played the most football. He's played football more consistently than the other ones. I do kind of get it. I still do like Fernando Mendoza. I think in this class, Mendoza kind of reminds me of Kirk Cousins type ceiling player who could be a very productive quarterback in the league for a long time. Maybe not a sky high ceiling, but I think a pretty high floor.
Well, if he can pull in the money that Kirk did, I'm sure he won't complain.
Of course. Shout out to Kirk Cousins' agent, always getting it done.
A big bag, new house for that person every 4 years.